Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the War Chest. I have for you the greatest story you've never heard of. This story is loved by billions all over the world. And I myself love this story. But let me tell you how dear it is to me, and you can understand. When I was about 17, my father tried to hand me a book called The Inquisitor. I didn't know what that was. And at that time, y'all knew what I was doing at 17, so I wasn't trying to read no book. So we fast forward to 2019 when my father passes away. I gather all his belongings and I put them in a storage. And I noticed that that book he tried to give me, the Inquisitor, he had that, and he also had something called the Horus Heresy. So I was like, okay, something I'll take time to read out later. But my father passed, and I'm not thinking about none of it at that time. So I put it all in storage. Well, in 2020, during the pandemic time, where everybody caved in and couldn't go nowhere, you know what I'm saying? I went to go get the books out of there because I went and got the bed. Because my pops got a bed that's worth 10 grand. It's sitting right there. You know what I'm saying? So I went to get that in the ice box, and I was going to get the books, but they had got waterlogged damaged. So I had to go to YouTube to see what it was about. And I loved the story that I saw. I didn't see Vulkan. I saw all the other characters, Sanguinius, Lionel Johnson. I love this shit. I was like, oh, this is what my pop's been showing me the whole time. But then I got to Vulkan, and my people, Vulkan is the most powerful human in the universe. Simply put. But none of the YouTubers will talk about him. They will only talk about the other Primarchs. And I don't understand. Vulkan is the strongest. He's a perpetual. Out of all his brothers, the Emperor gave him the powers of a perpetual. Means he can't be killed. All of his other 20 brothers can be killed. Because the God Emperor had 20 sons, genetically, that he created in a lab. And he gave them all gifts. But he gave his one son, Vulkan, which is jet black. He gave him the powers of a perpetual, which is the only power that the Emperor had, which means you can't kill a perpetual, which means they live forever. The rest of the Primarchs, they can all be killed, and they're all white. And you got one Genghis Khan, but he can be killed too. He's not a perpetual. The only one that can't be killed is Vulkan. And he's the strongest. He's the biggest. And anytime any one of his brothers challenged him, even the most brutal of them, Conrad Kurz, you can't tell me a Primarch that was more bloodthirsty and ruthless than Conrad Kurz. And he beat the living shit out of Conrad Kurz. So don't get it twisted. They like to say he don't like war and he don't. But every time he get into it with one of his brothers, what happened? He beat the living shit out of their asses. So I know why y'all don't want to spread it. Because Vulkan is really the most important one. But now, that's what I'm here for. And shout out to the Amber King and Warrior Tier, bro. Because they tell it like it's written in the book. And a lot of them, they read it like this for a reason. Because they wanted it to be told like this for a reason. Just because you don't like it, don't mean you shouldn't tell the story right. And that's why I respect the Amber King and Warrior Tier, bro. Because they tell it right. What you about to witness right now is some shit you ain't never seen in your life. And it's a reason why you ain't never seen nothing like this. And it's a reason. Let's go. Lord of Drakes, Vulkan. Yo, and I know this is fictional. There's no difference than this in the Avengers. I get it. But tell the story like it's written in the book. That's all I'm asking, homie. And Ember King does that, and the rest of them refuse to do it. And I just think, we'll see what y'all think, and y'all tell me. Y'all tell me why they don't want to talk about Vulcan. Again, man, shout out to the Amber King, bro, because he is giving it to us the way it's supposed to be given to us, how they wrote it.
Never think that war, no matter how necessary, nor how justified, is not a crime. Ernest Hemingway. War is a cruel place for a kind person, and though the Primarchs were generals bred for war, there has always been one that has struggled with being a living weapon. Vulkan, Primarch of the Salamanders, is described as the most human of all the Primarchs, and was known for his dislike of war. An outlook on life established by his upbringing and the life he experienced as a Primarch of a Space Marine Legion. The beginning of his story starts with his gestation capsule being torn from the Emperor's side by the dark powers of the Immaterium. Hurtled through the maddening and dangerous warp, the gestation capsule was spit out into real space towards the planet of Nocturne, located in the Ultima Segmentum, a death world. A planet with great deserts, acidic deltas, inland seas, and oceans. Though as a result of tectonic stresses produced by the gravitational pull of its moon Prometheus, there are vast chains of active volcanoes scattered across the planet's surface, combined with frequent earthquakes. Unfortunately, these constant volcanic eruptions have covered the world in a cloak of dust and ash. It obscures most sunlight to the surface. Any sense of stability on this dangerous world is fleeting, as once every 15 Terran years, Prometheus and Nocturne approach so closely that the planet is almost torn to pieces by the resulting gravitic stresses. This is called the time of trial. Vast tidal waves crash across the seas, extreme weather temperature changes.
Yo, and I'm gonna tell you right off the back, homie, I'm going the whole 54 minutes and 59 seconds. That's why I'm gonna make this one and I'm gonna erase the other ones. I'm gonna give you the full story on this one. I ain't cutting it into chapters. It's gonna be 1 hour long of straight real raw of the most powerful people in the universe.
Thousands of volcanic explosions, the ash further blotting out the sun, while powerful earthquakes constantly ravage the land. You would think that on such a dangerous world it would destroy any inhabitants, but you would be wrong, and Nocturne teems with life, even in the least expected places. One of the larger volcanic mountains on Nocturne is named Mount Deathfire. This is where massive, great fire-resistant reptiles called salamanders live. Even the deserts teem with prehistoric-looking reptiles and creatures. Hard places often breed hardened people, and by some miracle humanity exists on Nocturne, in the form of numerous tribes. Strangely enough, the people of Nocturne have been slightly mutated by their constant exposure to the high levels of radiation born from constant eruptions. They have developed...
They already say that's why we black, because we travel through space and the radiation turns our skins black. That's why we more resistant to radiation than any other people. That's real shit. You can always find something real and fictional. My homeboy Courtney Crenshaw taught me that.
Deep ebony skins, regardless of their original ethnicities, and the irises of their eyes now glow red in the darkness. Over many generations they have evolved the ability to see into the infrared levels of electromagnetic spectrum, to deal with this constant volcanic pollution that blocks out their world's light.
They had the eyesight of gods, man.
On this world of near constant night, like a blazing comet, the infant Vulkan in the 30th millennium burned through the atmosphere of Nocturne in his gestation capsule, crashing directly in.
I think the Amber King put this one in by accident because everybody on Nocturne is jet black. But this is just black and white, and I'm just not seeing it, but that looks like a white dude. And I know everybody on Nocturne is charcoal black, so maybe he is charcoal black, and it's just the color we're seeing. I am blind in my left eye from being shot in the head, so maybe I'll see something different.
Into the home of a black smiter, a blacksmith by the name of Nebel, in the city settlement of Hesiod. In the crater that was the home, Nebel found a child, a human descending from the sky. Perhaps this boy was the one prophesied to be a saviour by the teachings of Nocturne's set of religious and cultural beliefs, the Promethean cult. Nebel saw this boy as a gift to Nocturne, and may have believed that he was given him as a sacred task. So he took in this child as his own, and named him VULKAN. Like all the Primarchs, Vulkan grew very quickly, reaching full adulthood by the age of only 3 Terran years. He was also highly intelligent, able to vastly improve the already considerable metalworking skills of the famed smiths of Nocturne. Quickly he had risen in strength and wisdom, embracing the culture which had taken him up, working in his adopted father's.
They superhumans, bro. They fully grown men in 2 to 3 years. All 20 of them. So when they got sent out by the Chaos Gods, the Emperor knew he had to find them quickly because they all grow up. They were genetically grown gods. So he knew they all grew up within 2-3 years, so he had to find them.
Forge. Vulkan was raised with all the knowledge they could offer him, but most importantly, they gave him love and community. Unfortunately, during Vulkan's 4th year...
Look, I'm not going to keep interrupting it like that, but I think that's why they keep taking shots at Vulkan, because he was raised. That's just the way he was raised, with love. You know what I'm saying? And the other Primarchs landed on planets that wasn't nice to him at all. You know what I'm saying? It was cold. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them had it hard. You know what I'm saying? But Vulkan was raised with love. You know what I'm saying? But that don't give y'all no right to attack him, because he's still the most powerful, is one, and he's still the perpetual, and whenever anybody challenged him, they got their ass whooped.
Hesiod was attacked by the Dark Eldar, who were on a slave-taking expedition. The people of his hometown hid, as they usually did when the decadent Xenos came raiding. These cruel Xenos were attacking his home, his community. Vulkan refused to hide. Armed with only a pair of blacksmith's hammers, he roused the people from hiding and drove back the assault, single-handedly slaying 100 Dark Eldar. As word,
he killed 100 Dark Eldar. Do you know what the Eldar are? The Eldar were created by the first beings. The Eldar are the most... We gonna get to that, baby. And I ain't gonna keep doing this. This is the last time I'm gonna do this. Enjoy the story.
Word of this defiance spread. The headsmen of 7 of the most important settlements on the planet came to pay homage to Vulkan, swearing to fight rather than let fear prevail. He was the Fireborn, a legendary defender whose superhuman strength had defied the foul Xenos. In celebration of the Primarch's victory over the Dark Eldar, a tournament of various contests involving tests of strength and craftsmanship common to the people of Nocturne was held. As the contestants gathered, a pale stranger the size of Vulkan appeared, claiming,
"Hey, he a pale stranger because he white, and everybody on Nocturne is black."
He could best any man at the competition, causing many people to laugh at the comparison to the superhuman Vulkan. Vulkan accepted the challenge, and the stranger wagered that whoever lost the challenge would swear his eternal loyalty and obedience to the victor. With a smile at such a boast, Vulkan agreed to the stranger's terms. Many of the contests had to be called a draw between Vulkan and the pale stranger, for there was simply no way to determine a victor. For instance, the anvil lift, where the contestants were required to hold an anvil aloft above their heads for as long as possible. It ended in a tie, and the two
Anvil
superhuman competitors both held animals aloft for half a day with no sign of tiring, while all the other competitors had given up after mere minutes. Time and time again, each contest ended in a draw, and by the end Vulkan and the stranger were tied. The elders devised one last definitive test. Both contestants were given 24 hours to forge a weapon, before using that weapon to hunt down and slay one of Nocturne's most deadly reptilians, a salamander. The final contest was to determine who would swear eternal loyalty to the victor.
Shout out to Amber King again, bro. Shout out to you, bro. Real shit.
The final trial had begun, the salamander slaying. Vulkan and the pale stranger began the forging of their weapons that they could bring down the beasts with. They worked all day at their forges, neither pausing to rest. As the day drew to a close, they emerged. Vulkan had forged a huge warhammer, and the stranger a keen-edged sword. Like the beginning of a great quest or epic, the two superhumans climbed to the summit of Mount Deathfire. The volcano is said to be the home of the largest fire drake salamanders, the deadliest creature the planet had to offer. After hours of searching through the ash and the smog-ridden slopes, Vulkan found his prey first, smashing its head off with a single blow from his hammer. As he carried the carcass back, disaster struck, as the volcano unexpectedly erupted. Vulkan was nearly thrown off a cliff, but managed to grab onto the edge with one hand, stubbornly grasping the tail of his prize with the other. Vulkan had the inhuman strength of a Primarch, and held on for several hours, but his hold eventually began to slip. Was this the end for the young Primarch? A fall down to a fiery death in lava? Or drop his prize and swear eternal loyalty to a stranger? It was at that time the stranger reappeared, carrying a salamander larger than his own. The stranger quickly threw his carcass into the lava flow, using the heat-resistant hide as a bridge to cross over and save Vulkan. Vulkan was declared the winner when he returned home, since he had a salamander hide and the stranger had lost his. But Vulkan silenced the crowd. He knelt before the stranger. This man could have won easily, but he sacrificed his pride because he valued the life of his opponent more. Vulkan declared that any man who valued life over human pride was worthy of his service. At that moment, the stranger at last revealed himself to the Primarch, his true nature as the Emperor of mankind.
Now listen, this is the most important part, okay? This is the most important part, what you about to hear right now. And this is what confuses me. This is where I get confused. I'm not confused anymore, but I'm just confused on why. You'll see, guys. You will see what you're about to hear.
True father. Vulkan's father.
And keep in mind, my father loved this. And so do I. So we hold this dear to our hearts.
Had need of his service, for there was a great mission, a great crusade to reunite all of the colonies of mankind across the stars and protect them from Xenos like the Dark Eldar. The Emperor told Vulkan,
I won't lie, there has been blood spilled on this journey, and there will be more. I never imagined the enlightenment of mankind would be an easy task, nor one accomplished without violence, however regrettable.
Now listen to what he says. I know I keep interrupting, bro, but this is where once I heard this, I was like, what's the debate? Ain't no motherfucking debate. You heard what the Emperor of Mankind said. The debate is over.
The Emperor's eyes seemed to cloud over for a moment, then lost in abstract thought.
I have had failures, some of which I shall never speak of.
My brothers? The Emperor did not answer, and that was answer enough. Will you not tell me of them? Are they like me?
Utterly unlike you,
said the Emperor, brightening.
and that is your single greatest trait. My proudest achievement.
What's the debate? What's the fucking debate here, huh? Vulcan is the only perpetual here. He's the biggest. He's the strongest. And he's the... You heard what the Emperor said. What's the debate, homie? I'm gonna be quiet now. Y'all can enjoy the story.
To conquer the galaxy and expand the Imperium of Man, Vulkan had...
No, I ain't. This is the last time I'm gonna do this, bro. The gene seed of Vulcan was particular. It was secret. It's different from all the other Primarchs. Maybe it's got to do because he's a perpetual, which means he can't be killed, but it's different. And I ain't gonna interrupt you again.
not the strength to do it alone. He would do it at the head of an army of warriors implanted with his gene seed. The 18th Legiones Astartes, the Dragon Warriors Legion, his sons. The creation of the 18th was established largely in separation from the rest, as it is generally thought to be created for very specific ends. There were none save perhaps a handful of the Emperor's closest and earliest allies who knew the facts regarding this mystery. What was clear early on was that the gene seed of Vulkan had a low success rate amongst recruits. Many young boys upon Terra would die in the recruitment of this legion, but those who survived joined the Brotherhood. Combined with the slow recruitment, the Legion, even in its earliest engagements, had gained a reputation. They often achieved a victory against impossible odds and survived, although barely, taking heavy losses, which reduced the new Legion's active strength from around 20,000 to little more than 1,000 warriors. Although in doing so they secured themselves a place of glory and honour in the psyche of the Imperium's forces.
They was with the shit,
For an
bro.
Imperial army unit to be assigned alongside the 18th Legion was a sign that the forthcoming battle would be a dangerous affair.
Whenever
Be
we
it to
heard-
break a siege, disrupt a counterattack, or hold the line against an alien onslaught in order to protect civilians, they would plunge into the deadliest frays, holding the line for others. But in doing so, their casualties were enormous. This battle doctrine had almost seemed like a death wish. This constant self-sacrifice was morally right, but tactically flawed. This battle doctrine is not something new, as seen within our own history with the last stand at the Battle of Thermopylae. In 480 BCE, Xerxes led a vast army overland, accompanied by a substantial fleet moving along the coast. His forces quickly seized in northern Greece and began moving south. The Greek resistance tried to halt the Persian progress on land at the narrow pass of Thermopylae. The Greek army was led by Leonidas, who was estimated to have around 7,000 men. Xerxes, on the other hand, had anywhere between 70,000 to 300,000. The Greek strategy involved holding a line only a few dozen yards long between a steep hillside and the sea. This constricted battlefield had prevented the Persians from utilizing their vast numbers. For 2 days the Greeks defended against the Persian attacks and suffered light losses as they imposed heavy casualties on the Persian army. But the Greeks were betrayed and were now facing encirclement. But 300 Spartans and a few Greek allies stayed, knowing that this meant their death. Like the Dragon Warriors, they could have used guerrilla tactics, denying battle, or other options, but they stayed and held the line because it meant that others would survive. It was a guaranteed death, but like the Greeks at Thermopylae, the ethos of the Dragon Warriors meant that they had gone beyond the fear of death, but that very defiance of fear meant that they would suffer the losses of countless brothers.
They would, bro. They would not stop fighting. regardless of what the odds were. No matter how big it was, they would never back down. And that's why they lost a lot of brothers, because they wouldn't back down.
Vulkan had been found by the Emperor and was set on the path to become the leader of the Dragon Warriors Legion. But in truth, he was not ready. Vulkan was strong and fiercely intelligent, but he had no experience of true war. He had spent most of his life as a blacksmith and the occasional hunter. So for a number of years after his discovery, he stayed alongside the Emperor under his direct tutelage, during which time his presence was kept a secret from the wider the Imperium. During this period, Vulkan learned with frightening speed and comprehension, studying in the arts of war, history, science, constantly displaying his ferocious intelligence, and also wisdom and compassion that were perhaps at odds with the role he had been destined to play as a Primarch. It was in his training that Vulkan met with his brother Primarch Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands. As Vulkan engaged...
Hey, see, Ferrus Manus, that's my dude. See, I when I went to search Warhammer after I found the book, I got to see all of their stories, and I loved them. You know what I'm saying? Ferrus Manus with the shit, bro. That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna bring y'all all the stories, but they gonna be truthful. That's all we asking for, man. Tell the truth. I like all the other ones. All the other white ones. I love all the other ones. You know what I'm saying? But damn, y'all, let's be equal. Let's be equality up in this bitch, man. We can all enjoy a true story.
As battle, the Emperor and Ferrus observed the new Primarch. He is impressive, he admitted, then turned disdainful. But Russ and Horus, even Fulgrim, they match his prowess. I see nothing special about him. You'll see, said...
You heard what the Emperor said? Yeah, you'll see. Cause see, Vulkan was never a fighter like the rest of them, bro. The rest of them grew up on planets where they had it hard, you know what I'm saying? But they was all beasts, though. Every last one of them is beasts, man. And I respect their journey, bro. Real shit. Because I saw their stories and I saw what they came from. You know what I'm saying? That's why I love the Warhammer shit, man. And only to discover Vulkan. Bro, that's when my heart just dropped and really fell in love with it. That's when I really figured out what my father was trying to tell me.
The Emperor. And he did, as it was their common love of forging and creation that bonded the two Primarchs. Ferrus was stubborn and abrasive at times, and pursued the glory offered in war, almost the complete opposite of the humble and passive Vulkan. But in a strange way, they complemented each other. Though they walked different paths, they still had the same destination. Perhaps being with Ferrus, another Primarch, Vulkan had met an equal. As with any of his brothers, they often felt a sense of loneliness being so different compared to the average human. As the brothers bonded, Vulkan and Ferrus fought side by side, finally giving Vulkan the experience and the wisdom he needed to assume the leadership of his own legion. When Vulkan came to his legion, it was in the hour of their greatest need. The 18th, led by their Lord Commander Cassian Vaughn, had become caught in the rearguard defense of a cluster colony worlds against the wave of orcs. With the other forces of the Imperium engaged elsewhere, this dangerous task was left to the 18th Legion, the Dragon Warriors. Fighting against vast and overwhelming odds, the Legion's primary forces, numbering some 19,000 Space Marines, had marshaled the local defenders and held out...
Bro, 19,000 salamanders versus millions.
For nearly a standard year, repelling battles against well over 1 million orcs. scattered across hundreds of ramshackle ships, asteroid vessels, and
Come on, bro. 19,000 of us versus 1,000,000, and we still hold out for a year? Who's a beast are we talking? What is we discussing here, man?
dozens of space hulks.
Yeah, I'm talking shit.
The actions of the Legion had allowed the evacuation of 3 entire planetary populations to safety, but at a terrible cost. As the conflict progressed, their casualties became insurmountable. Brothers and friends were dying. They even suffered the grievous wounding of their commander. The remainder of the 18th had become all but trapped on the death world of Antiem, a lightning rod drawing the Orcs to battle them. As they bled the Orc forces, they saved countless human lives. But the stubborn resolve of the 18th meant that they would not retreat. They would succeed or die, as they had done for decades.
They beasts, bro. They not backing down from nothing.
Was he truly...
Oh, but guess what though, boy? Hey, your boy returned.
ready? He had to be, as Vulkan learned of the dire situation his legion was in. They were on the brink of annihilation, and Vulkan had learned early in his life to never abandon those in need of help. But when Vulkan would arrive, he would not do so alone, for he brought with him 3,000 new initiates, the first of the Legion to be raised from Nocturne, along with a host of new warships, war machines and arms, all fabricated to the
Hey bro, my faulty ass alarm was going off, but did you hear that? He returned with Nocturne Astartes. You know what I'm saying? From the home planet of Nocturne. These is different Astartes, homie. These is the all black ones from the home planet where he was raised at. So he returned with them peoples. You feel me? The other Astartes was still of his gene seed, but Nocturne is all black people. He showed up with them boys.
Primarch's own exacting specifications. They fell upon the Orcs like a hammer and shattered the largest of the space hulks orbiting Antiem. Spurred on by unexpected aid, the rest of the 18th hurled themselves in a renewed fury at the Orcs besieging them, slaughtering and scattering the green-skinned Xenos before them. In the aftermath, the two halves of the 18th Legion met and were unified upon Antium's dead coral plains.
22,000 people.
As the survivors removed their helms, and the terror legionaries looked upon the faces of their brothers, they
oh, this the first time they gonna see their gene father, Vulkan. This the first time all of them, because they know they all come from his gene seed. Each Primarch, his Astartes are all made of his gene seed, which means they're his abilities. So they all his blood sons. Basically, they his sons.
Saw their gene father. They could not help but know that they were one, and their Primarch had come to claim them. The survivors of the Terran 18th knelt immediately. "No," said Vulkan. "Rise, my sons. I am your father, not your king. We do not kneel in fealty." They looked up at him, and after a hesitation, got to their feet again. Vulkan was not finished. Kneeling is an act of respect. It is a tribute that must be earned, and you have earned it. He knelt, and the Legion in its entirety murmured in awe.
He knelt to him because he know the sacrifices the salamanders made. He knew what they was made of, and that's why he bowed to his sons, because he knew what they was about.
Your sacrifices to save the people of Tarsus Division will be remembered forever. You performed what was the impossible, and made the sacrifice without hesitation, knowing your task doomed you, and that it was thankless. But I give you my thanks now. He bowed his head. Seeking out the mortally wounded Lord Commander Vaughn, he confirmed the formal transfer of the Legion's mastery by presenting the fallen warrior with the broken power claw of the Orc warlord, the one who had struck him down. to seal the pact between him and his legion. They would fight for him, but he would fight for them in turn. Understanding Vulkan is to see that uniquely amongst his brothers, he had true humility. He was a Primarch, but he saw his life no more important than any others. All of humanity was...
Bro, look at that face. He don't look familiar to you. You ain't never seen nobody look like that. I have.
...his equal. After the battle at Antium, Vulkan set about remaking...
You know it damn well they meant for this story, for him to be black. They knew what they was doing when they wrote this. They did.
Reforging his legion, teaching his Terran-born sons the Promethean creed, the cultural teachings of Nocturne that pray...
Oh yeah, that's right. The Emperor did create Astartes on Terra with his gene seed. You know what I'm saying? But he brought the Nocturnes, which was the black planet of people who raised him. He brought them in and made them to Astartes. So he brought the Astartes from Terra and brought them in and taught them they way. You know what I'm saying? Instead of them coming in and learning the Imperial way, he taught them they way. You know what I'm saying? Like now, because from now on, ain't no recruits coming from nowhere but Nocturne. They ain't no more recruits coming from Terra, from nowhere else. They coming from Nocturne. All black people.
Breed selflessness, but in turn tempered the self-sacrificial nature of the Legion. Vulkan and his sons were one unified force. In honor of this new beginning, the 18th became the Salamanders, named after the fiery drakes of Nocturne, dangerous and filled with the will of inner fire.
Y'all know that's Rain in the background. I can't do nothing about her. She gonna fuss. I can't make her record every time she go off. We just gotta live with her.
The Salamanders, a united legion, a combination of the Terran-born veterans with new homeworld recruits, often breeds resentments in other Space Marine legions.
Never tell her to be quiet.
In this, Vulkan was wise enough to retain and value the experience of the Terran veterans, and he showed them respect and held them in high esteem for what they had accomplished. Vulkan accomplished this by making the Terran's foremost warriors his Pyre Guard, his Praetorians, the elite body of the chapter that would serve both as his honor guard and paragons of the standards that he would set for his legion. For the fallen First Master Cassius Vaughn, Vulkan fashioned with his own hands a unique dreadnought sarcophagus, the Iron Dragon, so that Vaughn...
See, in the Warhammer world, when you pass on and die, they can put your mind into a war machine, and you'll still have your conscience, but you'll just be a war machine. You know what I'm saying? That's how they did it in Warhammer 40k. All the chapters are capable of this. But Vulkan built this one specifically for his for his son.
Vaughn could serve as a Castellan and protector of Prometheus and the future of the Legion. Vulkan had saved his sons and assumed the mantle of leadership of the Legion. With years of battlefield experience and tutelage under Ferrus and the Emperor, he could finally enact the purpose he was created for. The Salamanders joined at the forefront of the Great Crusade, smashing Xenos empires and bringing lost worlds into compliance as part of the Imperium. Although it would never reach the high numbers of legionary strength like the Dark Angels or Iron Warriors, the Legion's power and battle prowess was undeniable, and its conduct in war was regarded as exemplary. It had been tempered, retraining the fearlessness and savage spirit for which Vulkan had been renowned, but those traits were now governed and kept in check by stoicism, lack of hubris, teachings of the Promethean creed. Vulkan had brought his legion focus, purpose, and wisdom. It was now said of the Salamanders that they were neither quick to anger, nor prone to rush blindly into battle as they once had been. But once they had decided to unleash their wrath, it was unstoppable, terrifying. There are three things all wise men fear: the sea and the storm, a night with no moon, and the anger of a gentle man. Vulkan was a reflection of the teachings of the Promethean Creed, humble, wise and noble, but at the end of the day, he was a living weapon. Buried within him was a fury any enemy should be wary of unleashing. The Great Crusade was spreading across the galaxy. For over 200 years, Vulkan and his sons went from war zone to war zone, imparting imperial compliance. Though Vulkan was a great warrior, there would be one act of compliance that would forever change his feelings on war. The world of Caldera, known as Ibsen by its inhabitants. The Salamanders were tasked with bringing this newly discovered world into compliance, led by Vulkan himself. The 18th Legion was joined by the Iron Hands and Death Guard legions, both led by their own respective Primarchs. Caldera was largely inhospitable to human life, but possessed valuable mineral deposits. However, the Imperial forces faced stiff resistance for control of the planet from the Eldar.
Now, the Eldar are more technical, the most powerful. They the most elder, really. But they dwindle in numbers. I'll get to their story, but they no pushovers. They the real fucking deal. Supernatural, psychic beings, they the real deal. I'll get to them.
Who had placed a garrison. The mystery deepened when the semi-feral primitive human tribes inhabiting the planet seemed more sympathetic to the Eldar, or at the very least not welcoming to their human liberators. This was a common problem that the Salamanders came across. 7 foot tall, obsidian-skinned warriors with piercing red eyes. Common humans were often afraid at the sight of them.
Big ass black people coming in with red eyes. Most people afraid of them. Yeah, we've lived that life. We know what you mean, brother. We know your struggle. We know exactly what you mean.
Defeating the Craftworld Eldar, Vulkan learned that they were guiding a webway portal. They had found a crude warding ceremony taking place, conducted by the primitive human tribal priests, attempting to sacrifice a Dark Eldar witch. Vulkan had learned that the primitive humans had worshipped the Craftworld Eldar, as they had inadvertently set them free from their previous Dark Eldar oppressors. The people of this world were mad, violent and unfortunately irredeemable. Vulkan reluctantly ordered the world to be cleansed by flame. It was perhaps the first time in his life where Vulkan had truly failed, and he was forced to destroy an entire human population. Vulkan loved crafting and forging, like on his homeworld of Nocturne, not butchering civilizations. Though he agreed with the Great Crusade, he clearly had begun to disdain the cruelty of war.
See, Vulkan, once he did that, he just, you know what I mean? The rest of them, bro, they were raised in war type. He wasn't raised to destroy planets. He wasn't raised that way. That just wasn't the way he was raised. But he did it anyway. He did his job.
Not long after the successful conclusion of this campaign, Vulkan and his Salamander Legion participated in another joint Imperial compliance action on the world known as Karatan, alongside the Primarch Conrad Kurz and his Night Lords Legion.
Bro, Conrad Kurz can't fucking stand Vulkan, bro. He hate his guts because he know Vulkan's a perpetual. And he jealous that Vulkan is a perpetual and he's not. And Conrad Kurz is one of the ruthless motherfuckers. Oh, damn, I was cursed. He's one of the ruthlessest ones on her.
During this campaign, Vulkan was disgusted with his brother Conrad and how his legion brutally conducted themselves. During one notable incident, the Night Lords slaughtered the inhabitants of an entire city in order to seed fear amongst the general population. Vulkan was beyond furious. How could his brother be so vile and cruel to innocents just caught up in war? His fury led to a brief conflict between the two. After the successful conclusion of this campaign, Vulkan reported Kurz's conduct to both War Master Horus and his brother Primarch Rogel Dawn. These two Primarchs were almost the complete opposite of each other. Conrad was raised alone on the cold streets of Nostromo, whereas Vulkan was raised in a home with family, community, and love. Conrad relied on these tactics of terror, fear, and denying battle, whereas Vulkan would fight head-on, shielding the innocent. This disdain for each other would only grow over the final years of the Great Crusade, leading to consequences down the line.
Oh boy, this is the betrayal right here. It's that 5. Oh man.
The inconceivable happened. After 200 years of war dedicated to the Imperium of Man, Horus Lupercal of the Sons of Horus betrayed the Emperor. Vulkan and Korax arrived first into the traitor's location and found 4 legions fortified upon the world of Istvan V. They were weary of their position, but upon learning that 4 remaining legions were mere
Now, bro, you gotta remember, they fighting other Astartes, other Primarchs, which is superhuman beings like them. This is the most toughest battle they gonna ever face, cause they facing they cousins. It's finna be cousins and brothers fighting. That's what it truly is. It's cousins and brothers fighting.
Hours away, the newly arrived Ferrus Manus convinced his brothers Korax and Vulkan to attack immediately, and so began one of the bloodiest battles in the history of the Imperium. Previous friends and allies clashed in a storm of hate. Horus had once been Vulkan's friend, the first found son that most of the Primarchs looked up to, but Horus had betrayed them, and the vision of their father, a galaxy at peace. The Iron Hands and Raven Guard and Salamanders clashed against the traitors, Vulkan and Ferrus unleashing their primordial strength.
That was still 3 against 4
Power
though.
as furious as the fire in the forge.
3 against 4, homie. When you talking Astartes and Primarchs, that means you got a whole nother legion to deal with. Nah, them ain't good numbers for 3 on 4 when you talking Astartes against Astartes, homie. Yeah, that's like Navy SEALs against the Navy SEALs, only it's 2,000 versus your 7,000.
The first wave attack was smashing against the traitors' line, but with every meter gained, hundreds of Vulkan's sons fell. The Loyalists had pushed deep, but with the arrival of the 4 reinforcing legions, they could finally have some respite, and so they retreated. Ferrus was too stubborn and pushed forward onto Fulgrim, whilst Vulkan and Korax retreated back, finally seeing their reinforcements. But as they hailed them, something was wrong. The Salamanders and Raven Guard could get no answer on the Vox. A haunting silence hung in the air until broken by a flare from Horus's command site. The reinforcing Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, Night Lords, and Wordbearers opened fire on the Loyalists.
They opened fire on them, bro. The ones that was coming to aid them, they got betrayed, bro. Oh, brothers and cousins.
Catching them completely by surprise. All around him, Vulkan saw his sons slaughtered, dying in their thousands. Terran's sons that he had knelt to. Sons of the people who had raised him on Nocturne. This betrayal of his brother Primarchs was cutting Vulkan to the core, far deeper and more painful than any wound. Vulkan became enraged, fighting with the strength of 1,000 men trying to save his sons, but it was all for naught, as Perturabo sent a nucleonic missile into the heart of the Salamanders. The 18th Legion, the defenders of the innocent, were gone within seconds.
He shot a nuclear bomb, bro. Perturabo betrayed us, bro, and hit us with a nuclear bomb.
Emulated in their own armor, men who had fought, trained, and laughed together were gone.
Now see, here's the thing. His sons did have his perpetual power somewhat of being shot in the head or being stabbed, But a nuclear bomb? Nah, the only one that can come back from that is Vulcan. And this is what I'm talking about, people. They nuked him with a nuclear bomb, and he still ain't dead.
He was alive. Somehow Vulcan had survived the heart of a nuclear explosion, regenerating thanks to his Primarch genetics, but in truth he knew he should be dead. Around him was the smouldering ruins of his sons, all gone. As the ashes of the Legion blew away in the wind, the forces of the traitors were approaching. There was no escape, but he would not go down so easily, and lashed out at the traitors, but was eventually overwhelmed by sheer numbers of the enemy and was shot, stabbed and bludgeoned into unconsciousness. When the Salamander's Primarch...
Bro, he got captured by the one dude he didn't want to be. Comrade Kurz, the one that was already jealous of him for being a perpetual. Comrade Kurz was already mad, like, why the fuck you the only one that's got the powers of a perpetual? He was already jealous.
finally awoke, he found himself fettered in massive chains aboard a Galrock hulk belonging to the Night Lords. To his horror, Vulkan saw that he was taken prisoner by the one brother he disliked on a fundamental level, Conrad Kurz. Over the span of several months, the Night Haunter took sadistic pleasure in attempting to break both Vulkan's body and mind. Months of continuous, grueling torture, physical pain beyond human comprehension, and psychological horror in the form of twisted games, ending in Vulkan taking innocent life against his will. After one particularly mad display by Conrad, he snapped and beheaded his brother. But to Conrad's immense surprise, Vulkan's body began regenerating. Vulkan had survived Isfahan and Conrad's murder. Vulkan was immortal. He was like the Emperor, a perpetual. This caused Conrad to have a psychotic break.
He's a perpetual. He's like the Emperor. And it caused Conrad Kurz to have a psychotic break. And I think it caused these other YouTubers to have it as well. Because they seem to don't like to tell nobody about old Vulkan here. That this old jet black man is a perpetual. But I'm here to do that.
Continuing to murder his brother thousands of times, but Vulkan returned after each death, only increasing the madness of the Night Haunter. Becoming sick of his brother's existence, Vulkan's fate would be decided in a duel to the death. Conrad offered his brother a means of escape. All he had to do was navigate a labyrinth, where, at its centre, lay his personal warhammer Dawnbringer. But this was no ordinary maze. At the request of the Night Haunter, the Iron Warrior's Primarch Perturabo had crafted a special prison, whose featureless walls and strange geometric design had made it all but impossible to map and escape. Anyone who attempted to mentally map the labyrinth would find that it was hopeless. Conrad toyed with Vulkan, wounding him constantly, but denying death. Vulkan was at the edge of his sanity. He had lost an entire legion of his sons, his friends. His brother Ferris had died on Isfahan. He had been tormented for years. It was in the moment of his greatest suffering that he had a vision of the Emperor in the form of a remembrancer. The Emperor reminded his son that he would watch over all of them when he could, and he calmed Vulkan's mind. Vulkan remembered that the fire that burned within was greater than anything Conrad could do to him. Vulkan goaded Conrad, calling him a weak and pitiful creature, that all of the brothers looked down upon him, that Vulkan had always held back as he was afraid of breaking him.
Now think of that. Hey, Conrad Kurz already jealous. And Vulkan told him, nigga, I held back on you, bro. You was too fragile. I was afraid I might break you.
Finally, at the center of the labyrinth, Vulkan found Dawnbreaker. Conrad still taunted Vulkan, asking him if he really thought he could teleport to safety. Vulkan answered, "You're right. I'd fashioned it as a teleporter, a means of escape even a prison such as this. I counted on you leading me here, on you needing to face me one last time. It seems I was fooled into thinking you had planned for this. But you're forgetting one thing. It's also a hammer. Vulkan proceeded to beat the Night Haunter into a pulp as a
Continue to beat the most ruthless of them all. Beat the shit out of his ass.
the physically strongest Primarch. It was like being smashed by a literal mountain. Buying some respite, Vulkan activated the secret teleporter built into the head of the Warhammer. Vulkan was immediately transported halfway across the galaxy and reappeared in the upper atmosphere of the Ultramarine Legion's homeworld of Macragge. Like a blazing comet, Vulkan began falling to the surface of Macragge, the impact of his body shuddering the surrounding earth. What was left of the Primarch was a smouldering pile of flesh and charred bone. But as he did on Isfahan 5, the Lord of Drakes rose again. As the forces of Ultramar had discovered his corpse that had fallen from orbit, they were baffled as to how this was possible. He was dead, Lord. And then he was not. Life returned where life was not, and could not be. He healed. You do not heal from death, Gilliman.
Hey, Rabute Gilliman's sons, the ones who found Vulkan, and they was like, when they saw him, they was like, shit. They saw him heal and was like, wait a minute. What the fuck? They saw it for themselves. That he's the only one with the powers of a perpetual. He fell from the fucking atmosphere.
Roared. Gilliman, Lionel Johnson, and Sanguinius in the Imperium Secundus had found their beloved brother alive, but something was wrong. Vulkan was insane. All the years of grueling torture combined with crashing into a literal planet had scrambled the sanity of Vulkan. He was not the kind, humble Vulkan of Nocturne. He was an insane beast, lashing out at all the unfamiliar before him. Unfortunately for Vulkan, he was in serious danger. The Night Haunter, who was trapped aboard the Dark Angel's flagship following a failed boarding action during the conclusion of the Thramas Crusade, would eventually make his way to the surface of Macragge, wanting to finish what he had started, and finally kill Vulkan. Escaping his confines, the raving mad Vulkan battled the insane Conrad Kurz. He was aided by a perpetual named John Grammaticus. The perpetual had come to give Conrad a piece of fulgurite, a large, natural hollow glass tube formed from beneath the surface of a planet during a lightning strike. This was the result of the Emperor unleashing his infinite psychic power. As the two mad demigods clashed, it would be the Eldar Farseer Eldrad who managed to convince John to forsake the Cabal Masters and choose humanity. Feeling like a traitor to his own for so long, John made his choice. He took the fulgurite and stabbed Vulkan through the chest. The Primarch became still as the night. John had decided to side with humanity and sacrificed his perpetual nature to cure the Primarch's madness. But
see, I was wrong earlier. I thought he did that to kill him. But what he did was use his supernatural powers to try to save Vulkan's mind. Because he had been, chopped head, blew up by a nuclear bomb, regenerating thousands and thousands of times. It scrambled his brain. You know what I'm saying? And he stuck him with that crystal trying to help him. And I thought at first that he was harming him. So anybody, I know they're going to come back. Well, you was wrong about this. Shut up, man.
Vulkan was unmoving, showing no signs of life. A lifeless Vulkan was mourned by the loyalists on Macragge, the 3 legions and a myriad of survivors from Isfahan. Matters, however, soon changed when First Captain Artelius Numion was successfully saved by an Ultramarine strike force. Many of those amongst the survivors had hoped that their return of their first captain would give them a new sense of purpose to what remained of the Legion. Numion...
See, they still had Genghis Khan Legion, Sanguinius Legion, Lionel Johnson's Legion, and Rabute Gilliman's Legion, and Rogodon's Legion. So you got 20 sons, then was the good ones left. So the Salamanders, which is Vulkan, Lionel Johnson, Sanguinius, Genghis, and Rabute Gilliman. Yeah, that's it.
Was a close friend of Vulkan, standing by his side for centuries. He refused to believe that he was dead. It was inconceivable to him. Coming together, the 67 surviving salamanders formed a new brotherhood, the Pyre, and declared their intent. They would attempt to break through the ruin storm to return Vulkan to Nocturne, to be properly laid to rest. As their journey encroached upon Nocturne, they were pursued by both the Death Guard and the Word Bearers that had followed the battle barge's course, intent on claiming the Primarch's body and the mighty weapons still lodged in his chest. In a last desperate gamble, the battle barge sacrificed itself on the guns of the enemy to allow the 20 survivors of the Pyre, among them Numion, to evacuate Vulkan's casket in a Thunderhawk ship to Nocturne's surface. But the ruse was quickly discovered, and the Thunderhawk was soon severely damaged, causing it to crash land on the surface. But the Pyre were not alone. The Salamander's garrison of Nocturne sallied out to their brothers, in turn slaughtering the Death Guard pursuers. With the enemy defeated and Nocturne safe,
he landed at home, homie. That Planet Earth is all black people.
Proper ceremony was conducted to remember Vulkan's passing. All 700 of the last salamanders in the galaxy dressed in their regalia and performed the final rites of their Primarch. The salamanders mourned their Primarch, their father, a man who had been a kind and honourable example to them, the one person that they had truly believed in. Their father's body was carried into the fiery heart of Nocturne's sacred mountain, Mount Deathfire, as was the way of the Promethean Creed. In the words of Vulkan, ours is a violent calling, but as adherents to the Promethean Creed, we believe in the circle of fire. None can come back as they once were, but in death we are returned to the ash, from whence we came to be born anew, our blood and bone bonded with the earth. Through fire our remains are made protean. Through fire and the reunion with the earth do we experience rebirth. After death, our duty is ended. We give ourselves to the elements, and in so doing become part of them. This is the nature of the circle of fire. No miracle had come. First Captain Artelius Numion was racked by grief. He was a soldier raised in the Imperial truth, but in his heart he knew that this could not be the end for his Primarch. He had faith. Discarding his armour and weapons, Numion scaled Mount Deathfire, and in a leap of faith he sacrificed himself to the mountain, swallowed up in its fire. Realizing the absence of their first captain, the salamanders raced after Numion, mounting jet bikes which were by far the swiftest way to travel. As the legionaries raced to the Mount Deathfire, they found a solitary figure kneeling in the desert. Rejoicing at having found their comrade and friend, they approached, but as they came close, they fell to their knees. They saw the figure rise unsteadily to his feet, a hand clutching an all too familiar spear tip embedded in his chest. It was their Primarch, their father. Vulkan lived.
Back again! Back again, homie! He's in it perpetual. You can't kill him. And you know what? I'm gonna tell you something good. Is that I got to see all the other Primarch stories before I ever got to see Vulkan's. You know what I mean? Because that's how much they were hiding it. Like, I enjoyed the other Primarch stories as well. But they were hiding Vulcans, you know what I'm saying? I had to dig deep and find it. You know what I mean? But I like all the stories, which they all end up dead and fucked up in the end, but you know. It's brother against brother, cousin against cousin. It's family feud.
Vulkan lived. The sacrifice of his friend had brought him out of his deep slumber and had healed his fractured psyche. When he first awakened, he found himself in the depths of Mount Deathfire, conversing with an old man, calling himself Deathfire personified. The man urged Vulkan to travel to Terra and led the Primarch to two items that he had no memory of forging: the Thunder Hammer Urdrakul and the Talisman of Seven Hammers. When Vulkan awoke, he was at the steps of Mount Deathfire and was discovered by three of his legionaries, Atok Ambedemi, Barak Zaitos, and Egen Gargo. He had endured so much over the Horus heresy, but Vulkan knew that the Emperor needed his strength. The Primarch used his talisman to open a webway portal deep below Nocturne, perhaps the one that had once terrorized his home in his youth. Vulkan and his three sons entered the webway. Traversing its corridors, they eventually found themselves in the realm of Komorra, battling Dark Eldar. They next found themselves with a remnant of Iron Hand's fleet called the Cult of the Gorgon, an order claiming that it had resurrected Ferrus Manus, but upon meeting the supposed reborn Ferrus, Vulkan discovered it to be little more than a mechanical puppet with one of Ferrus's mechanical arms attached. A disgusting mockery of one of his greatest friends and brothers. He destroyed the false puppet, once again reminded of the cruelty of war that the heresy had brought. After many more harrowing fights, Vulkan and his sons finally made it to Terra with the assistance of Eldrad Ulthran, putting them before the Imperial Palace. It was here where Vulkan would reunite with his brother Rogel Dawn of the Imperial Fists. It had been before Istvan since they had last spoken. "I would embrace you, brother," Vulkan confessed, "but that was never your way." Dawn laughed gruffly.
Abstination is a wise decision.
Vulkan embraced him firmly anyway. Vulkan has always been said to be the most human of the Primarchs, but this is because he had love. He truly loved his father and brothers, as a family would. Even when he had the opportunity to end the insane Conrad curse, he could not, for he loved even him, his greatest strength and weakness. The Emperor, now trapped on the throne, revealed that he had not only been expecting Vulkan, but had been guiding him the entire journey, and had been the force that compelled him to construct the Talisman of Seven Hammers.
We gonna get to why the Emperor trapped on the throne and everything, but that's why I wanted to show y'all us first. Yeah, I'm gonna tell y'all about all the other Primarchs. I'm gonna tell you about all them, man. But I gotta tell y'all this story first, man. It's a vast world.
Vulkan became horrified at the revelation of what he had created.
Oh, and these are movies. Like, I'm not gonna do 10 minutes. Each one of these are gonna be an hour long or however long it is. That's what we gonna do. And I'm gonna talk through it and enjoy it and turn you on to this beautiful world of Warhammer 40k.
A doomsday device. He loved to build, not destroy.
Well,
How could his father
I
ask
like
him to
war.
make such a thing?
So war is beautiful.
It was because the Emperor trusted his son. Even on the plains of Nocturne, he saw his humanity, and he knew only Vulkan could be trusted with the responsibility of it. Keeping his existence a secret, save for a select few during the Siege of Terra, Vulkan held his post at the Eternity Gate until Magnus the Red and a group of his 1,000 sons had infiltrated the Imperial dungeon.
Magnus the Red is another Primarch, which is his brother, and they got along. You know what I'm saying? They got along, and he really liked his brother. You know what I'm saying? But his brother turned to chaos.
To kill the Emperor. Vulkan blocked a lethal blow by Magnus's staff that had been intended for the Emperor upon the Golden Throne. but quickly backs down, and alongside his father, they bid Magnus to return to the Imperial fold. Vulkan and Magnus were once friends, and he desperately wanted him to rejoin them. But Magnus refused the offer to return after the Emperor told him he would have to purge his legion. Vulkan pitied his brother. In his shoes, he would have made the same choice.
Did you know what that means? The Emperor said, I'll forgive you, but you gotta put down your whole entire legion. I want them all dead. And then I'll forgive you and we could talk. And Vulkan was like, shit, I would have made that same choice neither. You ain't finna kill all my sons. And that's what Magnus did. He fought him because he didn't want to kill all his sons. The stories I'm gonna bring y'all all beautiful. They're all beautiful stories, man.
But he had no choice and battled Magnus. The duel was furious, and Magnus's abilities almost killed Vulkan, but he was saved from a decapitating blow thanks to the sacrifice of Eigen Gargo. Again, Vulkan had a friend die for him. A primordial rage consumed Vulkan, and he unleashed a torrent of blows so strong that not even the powers of Magnus could stop it. He had beaten the Crimson King into a bloody pulp. Such was the retribution of the physically strongest Primarch, but this resulted in his brother's allegiance to chaos. Vulkan had protected his father and held his post until tragedy struck. The Emperor had slain Horus, but was so mortally wounded he was interned on the Golden Throne. A corpse emperor.
Bro, did you notice that every time one of his brothers challenged him, he beat the living shit out of their ass? Every single one of them that challenged him, he don't end well for him. You're talking about a deadly blow. What the hell you mean a deadly blow? What the fuck? He grew back from a nuclear bomb. What the hell a cut from a sword gonna do? He's a perpetual.
It had been 1,500 years since the end of the Horus heresy. Over time we all change, but what defines your character is the ideals you stand by throughout life. Vulkan had learned compassion, love of craftsmanship, and most importantly, humanity on Nocturne. That even as a warrior in the Great Crusade, he still put his life at risk for others, even when he did not have to. That even when he had the brother who tortured him at his mercy, he spared him. That not even death could stop him from fighting for humanity. That he wanted to create, to craft, and not destroy, even going so far as to destroy many of his own creations in fear of their misuse. The time with the Emperor and the Primarchs almost seems like a distant memory now. One by one were the loyalist Primarchs gone, leaving Vulkan, the last son in the Imperium, a likely very lonely existence. The Imperium now was not the same since the heresy, mired in politics and infighting. I think all of these factors led Vulkan to the deserved conclusion that he had enough of war, its cruelty and destruction. For in peace sons bury their fathers, but in war fathers bury their sons. Vulkan would be seen last in the Imperium in the disastrous War of the Beast. The Imperium had become threatened by an orc wall the size of which had never been seen before. The Imperium was on its knees, and they needed help. And they turned to Vulkan, who'd been watching over the planet of Caldera, the place of his greatest failure during the Great Crusade. Vulkan was tired of being a warring general. But once he heard that the orcs were amassing on Ulanor, he...
Think about it. This is 1,000 years after his father was killed. Well, he ain't dead, but he motionless. As long as he on that throne, his consciousness is still alive.
Knew the situation was dire. In the Imperial assault upon the world, Vulkan confronted the Beast, an enormous orc warboss, who matched his strength in combat. Seeing no other way, he detonated the generator, causing a chain reaction that shattered the Temple Gargan and seemingly obliterating them both. Vulkan was presumed dead by the Imperium. However, the Salamanders still hunt him in the 41st millennium. They believe he will return to them after they have found all 9 of the artifacts of Vulkan. The Lord of Drakes is without doubt one of the greatest champions of the Imperium, the most human of all the Primarchs. And I have no doubt out there in the grim darkness of the far future, Vulkan lives.
The greatest story you never heard of. Oh man. And the greatest part about this is the story of all the other Primarchs. It's great stories, but we just want them told truthfully and spoken about truthfully. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna bring y'all all the Primarchs, but I wanted y'all to see the Lord of the Drakes, homie. The perpetual, homie. The one that can't be killed, homie. You know what I'm talking about? The one that lives forever. That you can't kill with a nuke. You can't chop his head off. No matter what you do, he's the most powerfulest one. He's the most physically biggest one. And he's perpetual. So he's the most powerful human in the universe. Simple as that. Now, I think I'm going to tell y'all Conrad Curve's story next. The one that hated him so much. Because shit, Conrad, bro. Imagine growing up in the gutter, in the hood. Like, that's how Conrad came up, bro. In the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like, they all came up in different places. And Vulkan came up with love, bro. But he was still the most powerful, strongest one. And that's the way the writers wanted it to be written. They wanted the world to see Vulkan. They wanted all of us to see Vulkan as the most powerful human being in the universe when it comes to Warhammer 40k that billions of people love. Vulkan is the most powerful human being in all of 40k. There's nobody that can exceed his power. The Emperor, remember, they tied on everything, homie. Yeah, and he's a perpetual, so he's the most powerful being in the Warhammer universe. And can't none of you bums challenge that, because that's a fact. So, man, like I said, this is the world of Warhammer 40k. And this is what we're going to dive into. And I promise y'all going to love these movies, man. Because there's so much feminine shit on TV today, man, that just seeing something like this, man, it's a fresh break, especially for the dragons, man. These are good stories for y'all, man. I know the dragons going to love these stories, man, for real. And it's a lot of them, man. But just remember who's top dog. That's why I let y'all see who's top dog first before we look at everybody else's story. Oh, Vulkan is the top dog, the most powerful man in the universe, the perpetual son of the God Emperor, the most powerful, strongest. Say again, and y'all have a good one, and I'll see y'all on the next one from the War Chest. And thank you for joining me.